I guess today was one of those days where I was open enough to speak my mind. And I went to church today, and the minister asked if anybody wanted to say anything. And people mentioned things like, you know, the shooting of Charlie Kurt, I think his name is. I wasn't really aware of him, but I think it's terrible, you know, that someone would be killed like that. And I mentioned the children, the children that was killed by that guy with the gun that you know, shouldn't have had a gun. I didn't mention that, but just I think it happened in Minnesota. And then I said, and the 20,000 children in Gaza that have been killed. And a lot of Christians don't care about that, but they should. And then after church, I spoke to the minister a little bit, like about my family, my kids and stuff. But I said, I'm not liberal about everything, but I guess probably you may show from some of the things I say that I might be more liberal. And then so maybe I don't. I mean, I'm not sure I even fit in church. But this is an evangelical church. It's pretty nice, and I'm just saying I don't really know, like, it doesn't really matter about me, but I wish that the evangelicals would be more interested in things like, people being genocided in Gaza, and even the Jews are not really, even though church is always talking about Jews and Jesus was a Jew and he talked to the Jews, this part of the Bible was said to the Jews, but in the scheme of things, of the whole idea about, wanting a rapture to come and Bible prophecy, the Jews are as much collateral damage in that ideology as the Muslims and Christians as well that are Palestinians. So it isn't really a win-win for anyone, and it's kind of fairy tale-ish in a way. I read a book by a African Jewish Israeli who went to Israel for asylum, which is a good thing, and he wrote a book called Can We Talk About Israel? And he says that there's a big difference between anti-Semitism and criticizing Israel, because anti-Semitism is like saying, oh, the Jews do this, control everything, and all Jews, believe this, blah, blah, blah. And that's not true, because not all Jews are Zionists, and not all Jews believe in this. And criticizing Israel is different. It's like saying, we don't like what the Israeli government. I mean, I have a friend who's Israeli and lives in Israel, and he says, I'm Israeli, but I am not my government. And that's an important thing to look at. We can't really to promote hatred toward anyone is not the answer. Not toward anyone. Chris Van Hollen and Senator Chris Van Hollen and Senator Mark Lee gave a great speech about Gaza that I watched on YouTube today, and they also said something nice, about, it was terrible, about the killing of Charlie Kirk, I believe it is. And I know some people, even one of my kids was upset about it. I wasn't even familiar with him, but I think it's terrible that a 31-year-old father of two and husband was killed. And they honored that. Sometimes I feel like the Republicans never honor anybody on the left who, gets killed, but what can you do? I'm not saying either side is perfect, but there really needs to be more compassion in this world, more of an open mind. And I hope that Christianity doesn't just stay this closed minded view. And I know not all Christians that, Catholics and Methodists have, even the Methodist Church, I believe, I don't know if it's true, I saw online that they've divested from Israel, but I'm not saying anybody should be anti-Israel either. I'm just saying that it's genocide is not okay, and a lot of Jews are against this. So that's all I have to say. I just was a little more forthcoming today than my usual self, and I've been through so much as of late that I'm not concerned what anyone thinks of me. I speak my heart.